Hey everyone, how about that Robert E. Lee, huh? So, it's time for me to spill some tea on Robert E. Lee. I'm sure for some of you, you have fond memories of the almost 30-year-old documentary now, The Civil War by Ken Burns, that came out in 1991. And you would not be alone. Actually, a majority of people that I know, their experience with learning about the American Civil War comes from this documentary. It's on Netflix and definitely worth watching. It is starting to show its age, though. One of the first things that sticks out to me about it anyway is that it portrays Robert E. Lee as this gentleman, brilliant strategist who despised or was ambivalent about slavery, but, joined the Confederacy because he was a Virginian and he wanted to protect Virginia against invasion. And of course, it wouldn't be in the news for Quickstep if Donald Trump hadn't opened his mouth and said that when he said there were very good people on both sides, when he referred to Charlottesville, in which one of those sides was white nationalists, he said he was just merely referring to Robert E. Lee and that, on both sides of the Civil War. You might also think that the Confederacy left and that the war was about states' rights, but I'm not going to address that in this video, but you're wrong. I mean, states' rights to do what, specifically? So let's go for the first one that actually sticks out quite a bit, and that is, there's this common conception that Robert E. Lee was some sort of military genius, and that even though he was outgunned and outmanned, he still managed to pull miraculous victory after miraculous victory, which resulted in the Confederacy faring a lot better than it should have. And this isn't actually necessarily wrong, even though he had never actually fought in a battle before the Civil War. He actually was a pretty good tactician, very good at winning battles and using resources properly on the battlefield. The problem is that he wasn't so great of a strategist. He defaulted to his general's training, and so he treated the Civil War as if it was a conventional conflict. And so he thought he could win by, playing the chess game. The problem is that the Confederacy from day one was extremely outmanned. It had way less supplies, it was way less organized and unified, and winning a conventional war against a vastly superior foe is never going to be a thing that works for you. But Robert E. Lee did not have the outside-of-the-box thinking that would have resulted in, trying to push more for a guerrilla tactics or, something that violates the conventions of warfare in order to shake up the game and get the Confederacy the victory it probably could have gotten if they had played it correctly. Because, I don't know if you know, but the United States did something very similar in a war when they were outgunned and outmanned and they had very few people. It was called the American Revolution, and they succeeded. So that's one thing that historians have begun to really unpack in the last 30 years since the Ken Burns documentary. The other thing, the whole myth that Robert E. Lee was somehow ambivalent about slavery or even despised the institution of slavery, seems to be in doubt. Robert E. Lee was a slave owner, and he married into one of the largest slaveholding families in the South. Also, during the Civil War, a lot of slaves tried to escape from various plantations, and it was known that Robert E. Lee was particularly cruel towards slaves, especially those that tried to escape, and ran his plantation, or at least had orders to run his plantation, with extremely cruel overseers and lots of corporal punishment. Also, in order to maintain control, he would break up families that had been living together for decades, which you need to study if you haven't, because the story of breaking up enslaved families left deep scars on the American South. And after the war, Black people had a lot of just dark legacy that came from the fact that mothers were often separated from their children, married couples were often split apart just because they were bought and traded commodities rather than people in the eyes of their owners. Slavery was really messed up. And I do think that things like Robert E. Lee, the story, the way that we built myths around Robert E. Lee fits the whole lost cause myth of the American Civil War, something that I really think I should do its own video about, because the legacy of the Civil War in American history is one that is very interesting, really disturbing, and speaks a lot to the story of white supremacy and race relations in America, especially in the post-Reconstruction moment. I do think in our moment right now, where we are discussing race in a very different way than we have in quite a while, the sort of liberal colorblindness seems to be fading away, and we're having a more frank and honest discussion about racism, and white supremacy. This would probably be a really good time for a new Civil War documentary. I think that Ken Burns, with his 30 years of having the definitive Civil War series, should come to an end. And I think that we need a new 21st century Civil War documentary that is up to date with scholarship and speaks frankly and honestly about the horrors of slavery and white supremacy, both in the antebellum period of America, but also how the war still kept racism and white supremacy alive after it finished. You know, PBS, I'm totally down. Call me. Do you guys want to know more about this? You should let me know if you want me to do some Civil War videos. I think I'd really find that fun to do. And I might be doing something relating to the American Civil War, but not for this channel. Stay tuned. I'm sure I will point to it when it comes out. Last thing I want to say to everyone is that I'm getting very close to 50,000 subscribers. Like, as the time of recording, it's about a little over 100 away. So if you have any friends or family or, you know, Reddit communities or whatever that you think would like Step Back, but they haven't had the chance to see it yet, this would be a really great time to share your favorite Step Back video with them. Keep watching. Go to my Twitter or something. Anyways, peace.